जाती प्रांत भाषा वेश सारे संपुले एक निष्ठा एक आशा एक रंगी रणभूमि
Thank you. Hi everyone, I am Samata Mane, Assistant Professor. I am associated with the Institute since year 2001. It's my pleasure that I have got this opportunity to welcome all of you, my dear friends, to this platform. Here I feel that it's my responsibility first to brief all of you with our institute. Yashwantrao Chavan School of Social Work Satara is an institute established in the name of late Yashwantraoji Chavan, the first Chief Minister of Maharashtra and the former Defense Minister of India. The institute was established by Honorable Padma Shri Lakshman Mane sir, one of the popular writer, activist, and a true social worker, man with a different vision. He's been born and brought up from a very poor family. Despite all his hardships, he started with a very small organization named Bharatiya Bhatke Vimukta Vikas va Sanshadhan Sanstha, which is primarily working for education and research of denotified and nomadic tribes. Through this organization, various ashram schools and our social work college is working. He got inspiration from Yashwantrao Chavan sir, which has resulted in establishment of this organization. Honorable Chavan sir was the first president of this organization. After him, since year 1987, the president of this organization is Honorable Sharad Chandraji Pawar Sahib. Now, under his leadership and guidance, this organization flourishing day by day. It is adding new feathers every year. We feel very much proud to share with you that 3 of our ashram schools are ISO 9015 certified ashram schools. Under the aegis of this organization, our school, our social work college was established in the year 1994. From day one itself, our MSW degree course was launched on grant-in-aid basis from state government of Maharashtra. After this, we started BSW degree course in year 1996. Around 2000 plus graduates have pursued their degrees and are working as professional social workers in different parts of India and abroad as well. We are also running 2 family counseling centers. and Vihan Community Support Center for HIV positive people. We are also involved in a lot of institutional social responsibilities. We are very much proud to share with you that in this current COVID-19 pandemic situation, we have raised a donation of around 13.5 lakhs rupees, through which we have distributed ration kits to around 900 families in and around Satara. Still, this work is going on. We thought, why not we can also take up this opportunity to share expertise of eminent scholars on different topics of interest with our fellow beings. We had arranged 4 conferences recently on various important issues. One of them was aligned with today's topic itself, that is NAC accreditation and assessment process. Many of you were part of it. We are very happy to see you all again on this platform. Today's topic is also very, very important. Role of teachers in teaching, learning, and evaluation, which is in the criterion 2 in the NAC accreditation process. It carries out 350 marks out of 1000 marks, one of the highest mark criterion in NAC accreditation process. So very, very vital and to be focused properly. So session will be focusing on the activities to be conducted and documents to be maintained by each teaching faculty to fulfill the requirements of this criteria. Now, you all might be knowing that NAC accreditation is made obligatory for all higher learning institutes by 2020. The stress is more when the state universities strive for UGC grants, financial aid, RUSA grants, as NAC is linked to the funding for government-run institutions. NAC is not a simple deal. There is so much to refer to. There is a lot of data gathering and compilation, reporting that has to go hand in hand with the process. Whatever it be, we wish to help you get NAC ready. Our main intention is to make NAC appear easy to you. Hence, we came up with this topic. Our focus is how we could make you breathe easy throughout the process of NAC. So, my dear friend, once again, on behalf of our institute, I welcome all of you to this e-conference. Now, I request our Honorable In-Charge Principal, Dr. Shali Madam, to please deliver her introductory speech. Over to you, Shali Madam.
Yeah, thank you, Samatha. A very pleasant good morning to one and all. Respected Dr. Ramya, Head of the Department of History, Kristu Jayanti College, Bangalore, today's resource person, I may say dynamic personality, the principals, IQAC coordinators, faculty members from all over India, Bhai Mane, the working president of our institute, Jivan Borate, the IQAC coordinator, Ms. Samadha Mane, one of the coordinator of this conference, and all my colleagues who are the strength of Yeshwantrao Chavan School of Social Work. I feel highly privileged and proud to welcome all of you to this learning platform. On this occasion, I also would like to remember Honorable Padma Shri Lakshman Mane, the founder of our institute, whose vision enabled us to impart social work education to the aspirants for the last 25 years, and also to initiate various extension projects as social responsibility. In this conference, we are discussing on the role of teachers in teaching learning process with reference to NAC assessment. I believe all of us do many things in a very dedicated manner, but sometimes we fail to place it in the framework of NAC and present it. Therefore, we have to understand the expectation of NAC and keep the record of work accordingly. Probably we have to read in between the lines and understand the things. There is no need to copy anything from others because each institute is unique in terms of the composition of the students, faculty, locality, vision and mission of the institute. Our institutes have a significant role in human resource development, capacity building of individuals to cater to the needs of the economy, society, and the country as a whole. thereby contributing to the development of the nation. Serving the cause of social justice, ensuring equity, and increasing access to higher education are a few ways by which higher education institutes can contribute to the national development. Therefore, assessment and accreditation process of the NAC looks into the ways the institute have been responding to and contributing towards national development.
Yes, sir.
NAC also examine the role of higher education institute in preparing the students to achieve core competencies to face the global requirements successfully. So we need to be innovative, creative in our approach to ensure skill development amongst the students. Towards achieving this, we have to establish collaborations with industries, network with community-based organizations around our institutes. NAC assessment also examines how the essential and desirable values are being inculcated in the students by the institute. This is a high need of the time now. NAC accreditation would also look at how the institute have put in place their electronic data management systems and electronic resources and their access to internal and external stakeholders, particularly the student community. How teachers are using ICT in teaching, that also being looked into. Institutions should demonstrate a drive to develop them into centers of excellence. In all these aspects, teachers are playing an important role. The teaching learning process should be student oriented. There needs to be fulfilled. All these aspects would be discussed here today by Ramya Madam. We hope that this conference would definitely enrich us with some new knowledge for achieving excellence in our respective institutions and thus to contribute towards enhancement of quality education in our country. Also, I feel that the teaching fraternity should be more concerned to make awareness among our students and community around to execute prevention strategy to prevent coronavirus spread as the situation is aggravating day by day in our country. Thank you all. Over to Samadha.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaili Madam, for your introductory speech. Now, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Mrs. Ramya B., Head of the History Department, Kristu Jayanti College, Bangalore. She has got teaching experience of 19 years, interested in multi-dimensions of historical learning and pursue research in modern history, women, and human rights. An active member of IQSC from 15 years, coordinator of Central Documentation Team of Kristu Jayanti College, Secretary of Academic Council of the institution, and Staff Secretary of Teacher Council. So we are very fortunate enough to have such an eminent personality with us, which is having a very good academic experience. I hope you all will enjoy the session and will take as much as possible knowledge. So now I request Ramya Madam to take the charge and start with the session. Over to you, Ramya Madam.
Thank you, Professor Samantha, and I wish to thank Dr. Shaili Joseph, Principal, who invited me for this program. Am I audible? Shall I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
May I start with the screen sharing also?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So thank you for inviting me. I know this is an era in which there are many programs that is happening in the recent 2 months. So I hope to do justice on sharing some of my experiential knowledge in this process of going for accreditation. So with that, I would like to say that NAC has given us a great mandate as teachers and professors of education institutions that we are directly contributing to quality improvement and quality sustenance activities of our institution. In that regard, I am very happy to see around 100 participants have registered and they have come on time to listen to me. I hope this session is meaningful and I would be able to learn from you, your experience sharing also at the end of the presentation. So thank you for inviting me. With that, let me start with the session for the day. So as a beginning note, I want to know that how all of us might have read about the core values of NAC. These core values of NAC can also serve as a scale of measurement of how we are looking into the quality of our own institutions. So when we look at this as a scale, it becomes very interesting. So we can see how far we are able to match up with the expectation of the nation. Are we contributing to national development? Are we building global competencies? Are our children ready and they leave as a graduate from our institution? Are they ready with global competencies? Are we inculcating value system among students? So I was very happy to hear from Yeshwantrao Institute of Social Work. From the beginning note to now, they have made sure that they are an organization who spread value around people who are with them. So that way, are all of us doing the same? And are we using technology for right purposes? And are we promoting the use of technology among young generation? And what is the quest for excellence that is there in us? So NAC has set us a big target. NAC want all the institutions. So we are around 13,399 institutions in India. They want all those institutions to get accredited. So it's a very long journey. And by the way that all are showing interest, it looks like it is achievable. So we need to understand the new revised methodology of NAC. So I will spend 30 seconds on it to say that we need to know what are the 7 criteria which serve as the basis for assessment. So in the NAC website, they have in their portal, they have made it very clear and transparent. What are the 7 criteria that they are looking for assessment? In the revised criterions, they have clearly spelled out there are certain criteria which are metrics which are quantitative in nature and certain which are qualitative in nature. So whenever they are talking about quantitative metrics, documentation becomes a very important. We need to quantify all our achievements for these 7 criteria. So it is we need to understand what is quantitative metrics. So 70% of the entire NAC assessment criteria now is quantitative metrics, and the remaining 30% is only qualitative. So the peer team, when they visit our institution, they are going to assess 30% of the total weightage, whereas we have already been assessed for what we have submitted through the quantitative metrics to NAC organization. So that way, when we are involved as a faculty member, as an IQAC member, we have to know in what ways we can directly and indirectly contribute for the quality development of our own institution. So the topic given to me today is to focus on criteria 2, the role of teachers in the teaching learning evaluation process and how we can document what we are doing during this process. So these focus areas questions, you can read it so that you can ask yourself as a form of checking, are we doing this service when we are imparting our role as a teacher? Because being a teacher is to be with open-minded, with service-minded attitude. That is why I am sure all of us have chosen this profession, not because it is lucrative. We have chosen this because we feel that we can make a difference. So we are doing that in each and every one of our class as well as our various other contributions to our institution. So our teaching learning methods should serve students who are coming from different backgrounds. And what are the types of teaching learning services that we are providing to those children? So only by experiential learning, children do actually learn. So are we adopting various instructional techniques? Are we using the ICT learning resources effectively to communicate? Are we training our children to use ICT for learning? Everybody seems to use ICT today, but are we using it for learning is a key question. As a teacher, have I motivated my child to use ICT for learning? And the NAC also questions our competency, our adequacy. Are we professionally equipped? And what is OBE and our contribution to OBE, outcome-based education and evaluation. So when this is a snapshot of criteria 2, expectation. So if you are from university or autonomous colleges or affiliated colleges, criteria 2 gives very high weightage to all these 3 types of institution. So I come from Autonomous College, Kristu Jayanti College, Bengaluru, and we are going for third cycle of accreditation. So when I am looking at this accreditation expectation, I would see that as an autonomous college, what is the expectation? Around 300 weightage is given for both quantitative metrics as well as qualitative metrics. So this is an important criteria for all of us coming from various backgrounds, whether we are from School of Social Work or whether you are from Constituent College or a university. Teaching learning is the key criteria that contributes towards the NAAC assessment. So let me move on to some of the criteria and metrics. So I have arranged my entire presentation in that way, trying to provide some of the information with regard to documentation, as well as what does certain terms mean, and are we reading it correctly, and is it possible to take advantage of how we are doing our activity to the best of NAAC's understanding. So that way, the first key criteria would be 2.1, student enrollment and profile. So here, the teachers do not directly contribute, but we are indirectly engaged. So the first one would be average enrollment percentage. So this is a straightforward quantitative question. I have put it as QN metrics. If you follow the presentation, it would be clearly stated what is QN and what is QL. So when it is a QN metrics, we have to fill in the data template given by them. So here they ask a very simple question, but it takes a lot of work to make this Excel sheet available, just indicating the number of students admitted against the total number of sanctioned seats. So the documentation needed here would be the sanction order of all the programs that we are offering in our institution. So whether it is BSW or MSW or MA or MBA or PhD, we need to have the proper order, sanction and order with the number of seats specified by our affiliating university. So that is the simple requirement of this question. And from here, they can take lot of inferences about the quality of the institution. And the second question with regard to reservation for various categories, and we have to show what is the number of seats that we are earmarking for SC, ST, OBC as per the Government of India rules or as per the state government rules. We need the copy of that rule, which we are following every year during admission time, that we have to show, keep as a backup. And then we have to show if there are 200 seats available, in that 20 seats have been earmarked for SC, ST or Divyanjan or women. You have to have a clear categorization. And then you have to show out of the 20 seats, how many have I admitted, SC students or ST students for the reservation. If you have taken general merit student because of high qualification of high marks, then it needs not necessary we have to show it under SC, ST reservation seat. It can be under general merit. So they want to know your admission policy, whether we are clear from the time of admission, and are we promoting the government reservation through our admission policy. Then student full-time teacher ratio, again they just want the institution to give a list of the number of students and the number of full-time teacher. So they do not want a part-time or ad hoc teachers to be given. They just want full-time teacher, and according to NAAC, it is 90% of workload is provided to this teacher for the full academic year. Then only they can be regarded as a full-time teacher. It's a simple data matrix. We need to fill it up for it, and they will ask for proof of appointment order or qualification. They want to know about their eligibility, according to which the institution has appointed these teachers, with clearly earmarked departments also. To which department do I belong to, and what is my qualification against which I got recruited to my organization. So that way, those are the fundamental questions asked in 2.1. So the next would be 2.2, where we are directly involved. So we have to show how we are catering to students, and how are we catering to various learning levels of students, students coming from various backgrounds, people coming from different parts of India, linguistics background or minority background, or slow learners, advanced learners. So they are categorizing children from various backgrounds, and this is a qualitative question. So we have to give a description of only 500 words, and you have to show a very clear picture of how we as a teacher are taking efforts to improve both slow learners and advanced learners. So every class has slow learner and advanced learner. Even if it is IIT or IIM, there is a child who is not to the level of learning to the class average. So then that child becomes a slow learner. So every class will have slow learner. So they may find difficult to learn at the average rate of the class. So if you already, it is a BCom section with children having 90% of marks, even then in an accountancy class, there will be children who struggle in accountancy. There will be children who will struggle in business studies or in geography. So we have to identify those children and we have to clearly state what efforts we have taken to improve the slow learners. At the same time, are we utilizing the capability of children with higher learning level? Are we able to make use of their intelligence? Are we pushing them to learn better with our classroom atmosphere is the question asked. So for this, I believe every teacher should have some kind of understanding on Howard Gardner's 8 intelligences theory, which tells all of us are intelligent. We may have one intelligence type more than the other intelligence type. We can't judge people by their math skills or science skills. Every child has multiple intelligences. So as a teacher, we can utilize different learning, teaching learning methods so that we can adhere to the learning ability of children of various intelligences level. So kindly look into this Howard Gardner's 8 intelligences theory, which can be very helpful for us to understand the ability of our own children. So when it comes to our NAAC criteria 2.2, this is how many institutions of India, including our institution, have made a study. So we, as a teacher, I advise we conduct a diagnostic test, an assessment test in the beginning of the class before starting a course. So we can conduct a small test so that we will know whether they already have the prerequisite knowledge. If they do not have, kindly conduct a bridge program so that you can fill the gap before they fit into the course. So are we able to adhere or cater to the needs of these slow learners? They are intelligent children, but they learn slower pace. So we need to provide some kind of learning skills for them, whether it is how to take notes or how to do outlining or how to listen better and then how to present their answers better. We can do compensatory teaching. We can provide them additional learning materials. Some children do well if you are giving them some offline material, or you can give them additional textbooks or worksheet to work on so that they can pick up with the class. And then multisensory learning. If you use audio visual representation in the class, if you are using simpler languages, if you are using pictures or films or illustrations, so if you adhere to the multiple senses that a child is having, you are actually doing for the benefit of their child. I am sure all of us are doing this. Are we recording it is the question. Start documenting it. So in every class, if you have spent 5 minutes of using multiple teaching learning techniques to cater to slow learners, write it down in your journal, in your work diary, of what techniques you have adopted in order to cater to the slow learner. Start documenting what you are doing for them. So these are just the samples. You are now hearing a lot about flipped classroom or blended learning, because now majority of our classes are happening online. So that means it is possible to send our lecture, video lecture. It is possible to send the reading material far ahead of time, so that the child can read and come to the class, and in the class through discussion and interaction, they can get better clarity. So that becomes blended learning. So that way we can make many efforts for slow learners, but start documenting those efforts with evidences. You write your own journal notes. So that way, as a teacher, you can show evidence how much efforts you have taken for improving slow learners. At the same time, do not forget advanced learners. These are children who can easily cope up in the class. So these are children who can be pushed little ahead of their graduation level. Even if they are a UG first year student, if they are good in class, they are learning your subject faster. Can you give them assignments at a little higher level? Can you enable them to do another add-on course? Can you ask them, suggest them some online courses, whether it is NPTEL course or whether it is SWAYAM course or whether it is international MOOC platforms. You suggest them few more skill additions, value additions, involve them in research activities, enable them to conduct small research and present that research in the class, make class presentations, then it can lead to paper presentations, poster presentation in conferences. So you are shaping them to use the intelligence for teaching learning. You are shaping them to use their intelligence to become a better graduate. So that way, focus that energy productively rather than in other ways, which may not help them in a long run. So even suggesting them to attend workshops, coaching them for competitive examinations, giving them internship opportunities, live project opportunities, from the entrepreneurship cell, you can identify them to do some kind of entrepreneurial venture, test it out within the college itself. Seed money can be given by the institution. A small amount can be 500 rupees also. They can come out with some innovative product ideas and they can make a kind of a demonstration within the campus which will help them to grow better. So that way, please document, list all the types of activities that your institution, you as a teacher, you as a department member has done for the improvement of the advanced learners also. And the next comes to 2.3. Again, it is on the teaching learning process. So here the key word used is student-centric method. So nobody uses now teacher-centric method. So you have to stop saying, I use chalk and talk, or I just give lecture. So you have to present your teaching learning pedagogy as student-centric pedagogy only. Even though you are doing lecture, along with the lecture, what are the other methods that you are adopting, techniques that you are adopting, which are making your lecture into student-centric. So the NAAC says 3 methods. There are many student-centric methods because this is based on the constructivism theory. If you are interested, please look into that. It speaks about how a child learns. Usually we learn from our experience by making mistakes or by learning from others' mistakes or by being active, by doing some hand skills, we can learn. Or you connect the new knowledge with the old knowledge. Then I recollect. Then I learn. So these are only 3 ways generally people learn unless they are gifted children, right? So in that ways, student-centric methods are all focusing on this constructivism method only. So NAAC is pointing out 3 methods. So when you are documenting, please document all the 3 methods. Experiential teaching that you have done, problem-solving methods that you have done, and participative learning method that you have undertaken within the classroom. This is a QL question. So you're going to give just a 500 words description, but please be domain specific. List different methods that you've adopted and then have clarity when you document things. If they ask for a proof, you should be able to show them by demonstration of what you have done. I have just listed down some samples of what I do, what generally we do, and my understanding on what is experiential learning or what is participative learning and problem solving learning. So experience is learning by doing and reflection. It can be a field visit to the nearest temple. So if you have shown some kind of architectural style, as a history teacher, I just need to step out of the classroom or I need to see an online resource to learn, to give experience. So you give some case study and ask them to learn by reflection. Exhibition, asking them to do exhibits or visit an exhibition and note down by seeing each exhibit or a painting, what did they understand by seeing it. So that is one way of experiential learning. You can take them to industrial visits, field visits, which I'm sure all of you are doing. You can conduct mock talks. So now you have to think of creative online ways of engaging experiential learning, because probably for the next 1 month, if classes are happening, it's going to happen in online. And we are very unsure about this semester too, right? So model making, social surveys, small surveys undertaken to understand how people think. So that also is called experiential learning. Talking to 3 shops which are near your campus. What is the product that they sell more? What are the problems that they face as a shop owner? What have they done? Do they know GST? So ask them to do as many surveys as possible with just 2-3 questions, talking to 20 children, then put it up as a graph, and then come in front of people and make presentation. That is what industry wants also, the ability to communicate and present your thought process clearly. So that is experiential learning. I can be a student of geography, or I can be a student of sociology or physics or chemistry, but am I able to explain what I have understood? So that's experiential learning. So in 1 hour of class, can you allot 5 minutes for this? 5 minutes for participation. So you allow them each ask 1 minute presentation for 3 children per hour, or have a small panel discussion or a debate or seminar, or televise a panel discussion or a debate and ask them to debate on it, how it is actually a proper debate, or what is the criticism of that program. So that way, involve them in the classroom learning. Whichever topic that you're taking, you bring in some kind of participation into that. So that would be very, very useful. Document it, write down in your journal, in your work diary, how you have undertaken these strategies. Problem solving need not be just mathematical problem solving or a science problem solving. It can be cause and effect analysis done by a history child, cause and effect analysis done by a chemistry student, or root cause analysis that can be done. Computer science expertise is also available, debugging or troubleshooting, management theories, case study analysis, scenario mapping. There are so many ways you can adopt. So NAAC clearly said, how are you using the student-centric teaching learning method? So start thinking on it, start recording it. So for a paper of 5 hours per week, 15 weeks of class, so it is 15 into 5, so 75 hours of teaching. Did I use 30 hours of my teaching for these methods? Not the full hour, 15 minutes of each hour have I adopted these techniques. So number speaks louder than the description. So start recording it, and that will help us in the long run for improving ourselves as a teacher also. Then when it comes to 2.3 continuation, the second aspect is use of ICT. Percentage of teachers using ICT is the question. So what should be the answer? 100%. All teachers of your institution are trained, know how, are using ICT methods. They are using ICT enabled tools. They are using ICT resources, online resources. That's the answer. But that's simple to say, but difficult to prove. So again, we have to know department-wise listing of teaching learning methodologies and how ICT is used in those methodologies. You cannot force feed. You cannot create it, but record what we are already doing. So this 3 months of time, due to unfortunate COVID-19 situation, many of us have focused our attention towards ICT learning methods, not just teaching and learning, but also evaluation. So start using different tools that are available for us for free. So I have just listed some of them here. Are we using LMS? Google Classroom is LMS. Usage of Moodle is LMS. So Google Classroom is free. You just need a Gmail account. You have to create a class and your Google Classroom is ready. Start sharing things to children through Google Classroom. Online test, you can have your Google Forms and conduct small tests. Then are we integrating open educational resources? At international level, educational resources are available. India, NPTEL resources are available. Pathshala resources are available. Our libraries have become digital. You just ask your librarian, they will give you a list of digital library, free resources that are available. Incorporate in your TL process, record it. How did you use that for your class? How was the class experience? What is the benefit of using it? So you have to start recording it then. MOOC is what already all of us know, massive open online courses. And now the fashion is SPOC, small private open on learning. That means what? Not just online learning. The class size is small. It also involves discussions. For every 10 hours of open classes, there is 2 hours of teacher available, so that you have blended learning experiences. So we can go for it. We can experiment it, whether we are in a village or a rural area or a semi-urban area, or we are in a city, with lot of facilities, doesn't matter. With available facilities, how best are we using it is what NAAC is asking us, and it is possible for us to show that. See, general ICT tools all of us are using, whether it is desktop or laptop or projector, digital camera, are you using for TL? That's the question. Then virtual resources which all of us have taken for granted, encyclopedia, online journals, blogs, social media accounts, even a simple WhatsApp account can be used for TL process. So use it. So how are we recording that? Using the podcast. That's called podcast. How are we using that for reaching to our children? And smart tools. What are the types of smart tools that are easily available? Many of us are using PowerPoint and Prezi, but we have lot of interactive blackboards and whiteboards, Google Classrooms, Google Earth. So start incorporating them slowly. And for special education needs also, there are a lot of tools that are available today. Please acquire them for your library. And when you have children with special needs, please show attention and encourage them to use audiobooks or voice to text converter or braille or headwands, so that it is easy for them, comfortable for them to learn, and they will need not be slow learners. So that way, advancements in technology have indeed helped us. I just wanted to say 2 examples of tools which anybody can use. A teacher who's in the verge of retirement, 59, 60, 61, who have never used any ICT tool, can also use it. Just your Gmail account, having a Google Classroom is enough. When you are using any kind of web page, there is an app called as insertlearning.com. So just download that. So when you use Google Chrome, by this app, you can insert all these things. Like you can, like you have indicated, this is a web page where you just have to assign this to a class, to a Google Classroom. You can highlight certain lines for the children to learn. Then you pick this question option and then you type a question. What is your opinion on this diagram? What do you think about this cartoon? How is it connected to this French Revolution? Or how is it connected to your subject area? And then with this same app, you can post it in the Google Classroom or to your blog or website. Simple. So you have just created an ICT resource for the benefit of your child. So that way, anybody can use ICT resources. So I'm sure all of us will say 100% of ICT usage in our institution. And the same way, free camera. What I'm doing now through Zoom can be done through this free camera. So this is an application, again, a free cam. You have to download to your system and then click it on, and then it will start recording our screen. So what happens is my PPT content is already in the screen. It will start recording. After recording, I can speak along with it like how I am doing now, and then stop the recording, and that becomes a video lesson. And that video lesson, I can put it in my website or put it in my LMS, Moodle, or in Google Classroom, or hand over to my college, who will post it in the website for children to study at their own level. I may be talking very slow, according to some of you. I may be talking very fast, according to some of you. You want to revisit what I have said, you can go back to the video lesson and revisit. So this free camera is a perfect tool for doing it. Zoom is also having a recording option. You can do self-recording. They have not removed it till now. As long as it is available, we can self-record our video class, and then you can circulate to your students so that they can study at their own pace. And then please understand, internet connectivity may not be the same for all our children. So when they have the connection, they can go back to that lesson and read that lesson. So that way, so many tools are available. I have just listed some of this. If you're interested, please look into it, so that I am sure all of us can use ICT resources for our classroom teaching, and it will bring a joy for learning. For students, it won't be boring. It will give them, it will keep them active and engaged in our classroom. Many research studies have been undertaken. Relationship between classroom engagement and ICT tool. Teacher is the important resource, no doubt. Nobody can replace the teacher, but an ICT tool can definitely increase the classroom engagement level of a child. So please understand that, and then start creating small resources of with whatever is capable, we can do that. So that's that about 2.2 and 3. And moving on to 2.3.3, here it is again a statistical question. Both this is QN, teacher, mentor-mentee ratio. So ratio of students to mentor. So in the earlier section, they are asked teacher-student ratio. Here they are asking mentor-mentee ratio. Probably this is same, or probably this is different according to your institution. If all teachers serve as mentors, then that ratio and this ratio may be same. But in some institutions, only few teachers will serve as mentors, then this ratio will become different. So we have to prepare a list of mentors and mentees assigned to each mentor. The notice board, that is a document. Then we also have to have a report of our discussions with our mentees. So that is called as the mentor report. It is generally, if it is very personal issues, we need not have to write it in the mentor report and make it a display. But if it is a general issue, it is possible to write it down and make a report. So for each child, I have to find out one issue which could be used to record. So as a evidence of how many times I have met the child or what I have done. So I hope you can see this screen. This is just a sample of our mentoring report, which we usually prepare. And then, is it possible to see, ma'am, Dr. Shaili, ma'am, you can see? Is this shared? This Word file is shared?
We can see, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. So this is just a report, a sample I just wanted to show. This is from my institution, Kristi Jayanti College. I may not be completely correct. You can devise your own format, but just a sample format, a consolidated report of mentoring activities. We have a mentoring book, but the book cannot be shown as evidence to the peer team. And in the book, there are a lot of personal data also stored there. We are not interested to share personal data of my child, but I can show how this mentoring has helped to resolve certain problems of my child. So we have written down as per our own format, register number. Whenever we meet, we note down the date. What are the issues we discuss? It can be irregularity, it can be indiscipline, it can be dress code, grooming, because they might come. We have strict dress code and grooming, and sometimes we appreciate a child who considers classroom as their learning, as a temple of learning. So that way, this can be grooming issues, it can be attendance shortage issues, it can be personal, sometimes grief counseling may be required, it can be research. When child do as a research project, they have so much of problem. So as a mentor, where I was able to meet them. So that's the point here. So that way, we can make a mentor reports. That's what I'm trying to say. In 2.3.3, that's one of the essential documents that we have to show it to NAC now. If you have suggestions, please let me know at the end of the session. Then when it comes to 2.3.4, preparation and adherence of academic calendar and teaching plan. Usually, it's a practice of all institutions that institution has its own academic calendar. So they will always earmark when tests will happen or when say class will begin, when practical exams will happen. Examination calendar is there, and major events of the college may also be on a calendar. But it is very good that a department also has a calendar. So that's what we feel will add value to this academic calendar. So I have a sample. If you are interested, I can show that sample also. And teaching plans, what are the basic things that we generally have to put it down in the teaching plan? So this is a QL question, we have to put in the sample. I hope you can see this screen also. Just a sample of one academic calendar prepared by computer science department, where they have listed when they will go for industrial visit, when they have rural exposure, when they have capacity building program, or when they have research symposium, when they are going to have conferences. So what happens is every activity of the department is also put up in the calendar. That's one of the good practices all of us can have as an educational institution. So are we preparing our calendar? Are we adhering to the calendar? And then are we following it? In case we are not able to do something, are we noting it down? Non-compliance. And are we taking it up later on? Are we recording that also? So it's a healthy habit, preparation and adherence of calendar and teaching plans. So you have to upload a description, and I am sure you have to add on this information. Then it is approved that you have a systematic approach, teaching learning process. Then when it comes to teaching plan, a sample format would be all of us can design our own work diaries, our own course plans. The course plan is what NAC has started to say as teaching plan. We always have a plan for each course that we teach. Teacher does not have a plan. It is for each course we have a plan. So it is always a time frame is given. And for each unit, what is the objective? That because OBE means you have objective for each unit, you have outcome for each unit. So what is the objective or outcome? You can point it out. What is the content that you plan to teach for that particular week or particular 10 days? So duration you set, this weekly or hourly, and what method you are going to follow, what skill development activity you will follow, what are the learning resources that you can have, and what is the assessment type. You're going to have a short test, or you are going to assess that only in the internal exam or only in the end semester exam. So you can make this teaching plan also modified. If you want another sample, I can show my own teaching plan prepared in the last academic year. Here the fundamental things are only this: duration, topic, and what method I use, what are the teaching learning activities that we generally do. So weekly plan for us, unit wise, title of the chapter, topics to be covered, and what methodology we follow, what skill development activity, and what is the learning outcome. So that's what we generally do when it comes to our course plan, right? So it's a weekly plan. So that way, it is essential. It also showcases the process. The strength is in the process. Once the process is put in, each person can customize according to their need, but it will reflect the quality of teaching learning process that we are following in the institution. Then 2.4 is our quality, profile and quality that we come along with. So I don't think I can change or explain anything in this. These are all straightforward questions. Number of full-time teacher. So if there are more ad hoc vacancies filled or part-time teachers coming in, then we will have problem. You need to show what is the sanction number and what is the appointed number of full-time teachers. Full-time teacher, again, it means 90% of workload for the full year duration. So then they can be regarded as a full-time teacher. It is the principal, the head of the institution, who certifies that these are the teachers who are full-time teacher in my institution for the academic year 18-19, 19-20. And they have to show appointment order for those teachers. And what is the qualification of the teacher and what is the teaching experience of the teacher. This they changed. Earlier, my teaching experience can be calculated from the time I became the lecturer or professor. So it need not be Christu Jayanti College. Now it is in the same institution is added now. So that means if I am working now in an institution, so only that experience will be taken as the teaching experience. So from my appointment order to now, there should be an experience letter sent if the NAC asks us. So that's how this total experience is calculated for 1 year, not 5-year data. This is 1 year data. Whereas the number of full-time teacher and the qualification is a 5-year data, and this teaching experience is a 1-year data, the latest completed year. And then next is 2.5 evaluation process. And here the process is slightly different for an affiliated college and for a university or an autonomous institution. The weightage is also slightly different. These 3 questions are only for university and autonomous college. The number of days taken to publish or declare results from the last day of exam to the declaration of results. So if the exam got over on April 30th and the exam results was declared on May 15th, so I have to say it is from April 30th to May 15th. So 15 days or 16 days taken to publish the results. for the last 5 years. So again, it shows the quality of the practice that I am having in the institution. Am I consistent? Well, first year I might have declared in 32 days, second day I might have declared in 20 days or 25 days or 15 days. So how many days have you taken to declare results? There should be an examination report, an annual report prepared by controller of examination or an examination office, and that report should have this information, and that is shown as the evidence. Or if you have result publishing sheet, that also you can show if you are a university or an autonomous college. Then next part is grievances. Are there any grievances? There might be. And if there are any grievances, what efforts have you taken to address the grievances? And total number of complaints versus total number of students appearing for exam. So this is very kind enough. So there might be 5,000 children writing the exam. The complaints or grievance could be 3 or 4 or 5 or 70. So it is 70 is to 7,681 students for the last academic year. So that way you have to make it for 5-year data. Then next is the QL report. Examination section should write all these things, reforms that they have done in the procedures or IT integration in the examination system and continuous internal assessment process that we have undertaken. So then comes for the affiliated colleges. The earlier 3 questions are not there for affiliated colleges. This is there for affiliated college. The first one is mechanism of internal assessment. So here also an examination office is needed. So here you are proving as a qualitative description, this is the process that we follow. Even though the end semester exam is conducted by the university, but for making internal assessment marks, this is the procedure of my college. I have 2 tests, I have 2 assignments, I have 1 assignment, 1 test. These are the components. This is how timetable is published. This is how results are published. And you have to give a report based on the examination office. So that's about this question. So they want to know whether your transparent system is there, whether it is robust. That means it is continuous and good quality methods are being followed. If you found a loophole, you have made efforts to change or reform your own system. So even as an affiliated institution, the burden is on you to keep up your examination system up to date. So now if online exam is being asked to be conducted, are we ready? If I'm not ready now, will I be ready in August 15th or by September 1? So you have to have a process in the institution that will enable you to reform yourself for better. Same way, mechanism for grievances. So grievance redressal committees must. Exam related grievances has to be processed separately and recorded separately. Kindly, if there are grievances, record them. Do not say 0. If there are even minor grievances, record them and tell what efforts have been taken for eradicating or to get rid of those grievances. So that's about 2.5. Then comes the most interesting aspect of criteria 2, outcome-based education, OBE, and all of us are asked by UGC to adopt OBE. Whether we are a university or an autonomous institution or an affiliated college, OBE has come into practice from the academic year 18-19. So if you have not undertaken so far, it is necessary that we should find out, have workshops on OBE, and then adopt whichever practice which is healthy and fit for our organization. We cannot copy what Oxford is doing or IIT is doing. We have to evolve our own mechanism on assessing student performance and outcome. So there are 3 things that comes under 2.6, program specific outcomes, course outcomes. Do you have them? Yes. Where is it? Display on the website for all the programs that you are offering. Next, what is program? What is course? Program is the BSW is a program. MSW is a program. Courses are the papers that you are giving for first semester and second semester. So do you have outcome for program? Do you have outcome for courses? Make a list, display. Simple. That's what is asked in 2.6.1. Then 2.6.2 is, do you have a method to measure the attainment? If I have told for course number 1, this is the outcome. Okay, how are you measuring? So these are the 2 questions which are related. You cannot say nil for this section. Then we will lose a big chunk of mark. So you have to start working. You have not delayed. So that way, have an understanding on the outcomes. Focus on what students will achieve at the end of the program. So after studying in my institution, what am I giving to my graduate? So evolve that. That is what is called outcome. So it is result oriented. What is a child capable of at the end of studying the course? What can the child do? What are the skills they can perform? What they can create? What they can accomplish after learning a particular course. So that's what is about OBE. I am trying to explain as simple as possible in the next 2-3 slides. So this is the process for the beginners. People who already know this, when they see this, you can simply smile because it is having a lot of smaller steps. But those who have not done it, I'm focusing only on them for the beginners. So what is your organizational mission and vision? Based on that, you tell what is the program educational outcome. Whether I am a BA student or MA student or ME student in my college, what is the outcome? Can I communicate better? Can I perform something better? So write down program educational objectives based on the mission and vision. In my mission is telling, I want to produce holistic learners. Okay, fine. But that is not measurable. So your outcomes should be measurable. So holistic learners means what? Academically, culturally, or sports. So what are the accomplishment my learner should have at the end of this graduation? So that is PEO. Then from there come to program outcome, BA history program outcome. Or you have a combination of courses. So you can have specific outcomes also for that. Then for each course, what is the course outcome? Then you have to connect COs with the POs. So course outcomes should be deriving out of program outcome. So addition of all the course outcomes should be one of our program outcomes. Then you should show how you are measuring that outcome. So evaluation methods you have to specify and you have to do your analysis. So frame your outcomes. So for that, I am giving you 2 reference documents. If you do not know, if you know already, kindly spare me. One is Washington Accord for Graduation Attribute. Please read it. The whole world has read this. With that only, they are framing program educational outcomes. So as a graduate of an institution, what is the way in which a graduate can perform or do at the end of the graduation? So program outcomes will describe knowledge, skill, and behavior of students as they progress and graduate. So these are called graduate attributes. So graduation attributes, otherwise PEOs. Then COs are domain specific outcomes. You have to write using action verbs. So please refer to Bloom's taxonomy for action verbs. So use that and then rephrase your course outcomes. So what is the scale? The course outcomes must be specific, measurable, achievable. Sam. So specific, achievable, measurable. So it has to be clear what you want to measure. And you have to show that at the end of the course, these percentage of students have achieved, these percentage of students have achieved at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So that way, measurement of attainment is what is they asking us in 2.6.2. Are we doing measurement of attainment? So this is what is asked in 2.6.2. Directly are we doing? Indirectly are we doing? We are doing both ways. So direct ways, continuous internal assessment component. It can be test, it can be assignment, it can be student presentation, it can be exhibition, poster making. By all these activities, how I am assessing the outcome attainment. Then end semester examination is another way of a direct measurement of attainment. When it comes to indirect, it is a feedback. It is how you are conducting an exit survey, conducting feedback from various stakeholders, from your own student and your alumni, so that you can have different ways of measure. Immediately a child became an IAS officer. Don't you think you have attained your program educational objective? They cleared a civil service exam. It is not directly mapped, but because of the graduation attributes, they are smart enough, skilled enough to become entrepreneur, to start a small business. They are smart enough, skilled enough to get employed. So that is also one way of measurement of attainment. It can be employability, entrepreneurship. innovation. So you can bring lot of attributes to indirect. For beginners, at least this much we can start beginning. Then we can have multiple workshops and then improve our own process. That is what I believe NAAC wants us to do. Set a margin, set a baseline, and keep improving from our own baseline. I don't think anybody is asking us to become like IIM or to become like #1 university of the world, but to be the best of what we are. So I am reaching to rural students who can't even speak 2 sentences in English. At the end of the course, I'm teaching history of India, but still at the end of the course, if they are able to explain a place or explain a personality fluently without making any mistakes, either orally or written communication, that is an outcome for history of India. Not necessarily I changed history of India. So you write your own outcome and measure your own outcome. That way, all of us can say this is the benchmark and we will try to improve upon our baseline every year. Then you have to connect your outcomes to COs to POs, then to the program educational objectives. I repeat, course outcomes of each course. Each course will have 4 or 5 outcomes. So course outcome number 1 can be connected to program outcome number 4 or program outcome number 5. So for a BA program or a BE program, you have 12 objectives or 14 program outcomes. So connect your course outcome to that. So everything should have at least 1 or 2 connections. Then you measure how you have produced a graduate and how your institution has fulfilled program educational objective. It is not directly connected to result. Passing and failing is different story. Here it is about attainment of your own outcomes that you have set for your own graduates. So please work on yourself. Don't take up anything that others have done. It will not suit us. So that's with that 2.7 I end this criteria 2. Student satisfaction survey is the last but the most important way of giving A++ to an organization, whether we are university or autonomous or affiliated. So the weightage is increasing. So for affiliated college, 60 marks comes out of a student satisfaction survey. So another way of seeing this is A++ means it is 60 into 4. So that many weightage is there for student satisfaction survey. So this is a questionnaire already available. You have to conduct this survey every year in your institution. You don't ask only NAAC to conduct the survey. NAAC is just asking database of all my students, their name, their class, whether they are male or female, their email ID, their mobile number or degree which they are doing. Just a student database, you have to send them. Phone number is optional, but email is necessary. They can email. Send the SSS, student satisfaction survey, to the children, and the children respond to the email. So it's about at least this has 20 subject, 1 subject open-ended. They are saying 10% student minimum student are bonded. Okay, so for you it is 10 5 and both, any one of that many response they should receive. Student should open the email, student should see that, student should fill that, student should send that. So then they will freeze that. They will calculate the SSS based on the responses received. So they are asking all the institution to transparently put this questionnaire in your own website. They also create a brochure. They have already done it. They have put in the NAAC website. They are asking us to put it in our website so that the child knows that this is called student satisfaction metrics. So they can read it, they can answer it. So start conducting for annual quality AQAR, annual quality assessment report that we are submitting. For that also, it has become mandatory to conduct SSS. So you conduct satisfaction survey, do your own analysis, improve, keep improving, and say these are the improvements that I have done based on the survey analysis. So that way, this is good for our own organization to conduct not just feedback, but also student satisfaction survey. So that's about, as soon as we submit our SSR, simultaneously DVV process, data validation verification begins. Same time, a student satisfaction survey is also conducted by NAAC, and then they come out with their results also. So it would be not a good practice if our students do not respond. So we should encourage our child to respond, but we cannot coach the responses. That will become unethical. So that way we can work on these practices also. So with that, I come to the end of this presentation. I have spoken for about 1 hour. And if there are questions, I'm sure there would be few. I would be happy to take those questions, or any doubts you want me to revisit any of these points. You have something to contribute which I can learn from you. I'm most welcome. So the floor is open for discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramya ma'am.
Welcome, sir. Thank you.
Dear participants, if anybody is having any question, they can raise their hands or they can go for typing it in the chat box. I have enabled the chat box. You can now type your questions in the chat box.
Shilpa Shri and Shiva, the Professor Shilpa and Professor Shiva have raised their hands, sir.
Ma'am, if you will go for stopping screen sharing, it will be better.
Yes, sir.
Shilpa ma'am. Shilpa ma'am, please unmute yourself. Shiva. Hello, Shilpa ma'am.
Yeah, I can hear, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
You can ask a question, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, regarding writing finite words for teaching learning process, can you explain little so we all don't idea how to write, go for about it. So do you have any sample of it, ma'am?
Ma'am, teaching learning process questions are very specific. One is regarding student-centric methods that we are following. Other one is regarding ICT methods that we are following. So if in your college you have 5 departments or 10 departments, so domain-specific write-up has to be collected by your team, like USC team. Then you have to summarize it. So it will be better. You have primary information summarized into 500 words. Additional information, you can put it up as a additional information. So for every QL file also, we can upload 1 or 2 or 3 additional information, evidences. So it is very difficult to put everything into 500 words. So you can make a list of types of method followed domain area wise for Department of English or languages. These are the methods that you're following. So you can have a brief write-up. Then for history or physics or chemistry, what are the student-centric methods that we're following? You can have a write-up. Then additional information and proof for those methods you can upload as additional information in the NAAC portal. So that would be better. So that way you can also choose what you can say in that 500 words.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Shiva.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Yeah, very good morning. You can continue with your question.
Yeah. Very good morning, ma'am. Your session was
Thank you, sir.
Very informative. It was very fine, helpful. My question is that while providing proofs, evidences for various student-centric methods as well as the practice of ICT, what can be given as the proof? How the documentation has to be done, like creating photographs,
Yes,
videos.
Yes, sir. Sir, for ICT tools, we can very much create photographs, geotagged photographs and videos, like what videos we are making, online videos, or how we are using Google Classroom or Moodle. We can take a snapshot. And then videos that we are preparing, we can have a copy of those videos, put up on the website and give the link as a proof. Then we can also create mobile apps. For my subject also, I have created one small mobile app. A MCA student created that app. So for her, it is experiential learning. For me, it is an ICT tool. So that way, my child always is in the mobile. So at least for examination, they can see the mobile. For my exam, maps are there, short answers are there, question bank is there, so that they can see that and learn. So that way, mobile notes can also be created. That's not easy for documentation. But a case study, role play, a discussion, student presentation, all that happens in the classroom. So here the documentation in charge is the teacher. So in my class, what are the activities that I have planned? So in the course itself, I am told for this unit, I will have a discussion on this topic, or I will have a case study on this topic, or I will have a map analysis for this topic. Right? So that way, for that unit, I have to give those 3 evidence. So in the case study, which case study did I use? Make a write-up. How many students were picked to discuss that case study? How many presented? Did they make a poster? So make a write-up, take a photo of that, and then create a write-up, sign it. You, the class teacher, the course teacher, signing that makes the document evidence. Okay. So case study analysis, you can have a write-up, sign it, what you have done, how many got engaged, what is the benefit. Role play, what topic was given, how many participated, how many interacted, and what is the benefit of it. So make a write-up, document it. Course plan is evidence. This teaching learning pedagogy analysis is evidence. So as a teacher, I should also look at it like a scientist. So my classroom teaching should also be recorded. If I am teaching 16 hours per week, I cannot create 16 hours document every week. Create at least three documentary evidence of the best classroom experiences that you had every week. So that way you keep recording it, end of the semester, submit it, present it in your department floor so that others can learn from the experience. That recording is also evidence. So we can start doing that way, sir.
Thank you for the information. In continuation with this,
yes,
see,
sir.
If I am uploading a photograph for a particular student-centric method, can I have some subtitles or captions in that photograph? Can I edit that photograph? And I can say that this is for Socratic method. Professor so-and-so is...
Yes, sir. That photograph, you can have a tagline. It's not a problem. Geotag is just a location of the classroom. So that will not have any proof. You can write, this is a role play done on 6th March, 2019 topic. Students involved, names of the student. You can create some.
Likewise, in the video also, we can have subtitles and
yes,
those
sir.
things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can have.
It will not be counted as manipulation, right?
It shouldn't be counted as manipulation, sir.
Okay.
We have our course plan, we have our write-up. Trust is the most important virtue. Which the institution does
if I do something with the photograph, will they count it as tampering with the photograph?
No, it's not like that. You are saying in the bioinstrumentation lab, some equipment is there. For that, you cannot touch that geotagging. It is as it is taken and presented. But classroom experience, I can only write. Nobody else can write. So there you write reference. Yes, sir. Teacher can make their own comments and that can be submitted. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shiva sir. Thank you, ma'am. There are few questions which were put up in the chat box. One by one, we will go through it.
Yes, sir.
First question, how to record and show our fieldwork and study tour reports?
Yes, sir. That is easy, ma'am. Because taking the child to field visit is difficult. You have to obtain parents' permission. You have to obtain the field visit location permission. Industrial visit means you have the letter of communication between you and the industry HR team. That email is a proof. Then you visit that place, take a geotag photograph. That's a proof. And the child, after they come back from the visit, they have to write industrial visit report. They have to narrate their experience, what they have learned from that location, and keep a photograph of themselves in that location as a photograph. So that one-page report becomes evidence, because in that NAC manual, they have showed per child, we have to show the evidence. So each student has to write this report and submit a photograph as a evidence. So that way, that is 1 year document only. It's not 5-year document. So whenever you are accompanying your child for a field visit or any kind of industrial visits, please suggest them to write the report and keep the copy of all communication between you and the place of visit. That is also a report. For a history trip, no letter written is there, only ticket is there. I can keep the ticket, I can keep the photograph of the location. So that much only I can show as a evidence for the field visit. And internship means company would give a record of internship days, that is report for internship. field-based project, permission letters, as well as the report of the child after submitting the project work. The Viva will be conducted, somebody would have evaluated it and then signed it. All that will become evidence.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. Another question, how to identify slow and advanced learners?
Yes, sir. That is also again a role of the teacher and the training given by the institution to the teacher. So usually teachers are told to conduct a small test at the beginning of each course. In every institution, the name of the test may vary. But if you do not have the test, start having that practice. Whether it is entry behavior test or diagnostic test. So you conduct one test at the beginning of the class. And if a child is attending first semester course, we expect certain minimum from the child. So the question should be from minimum knowledge to the better knowledge question. So 10 questions are there put up, 2 questions of higher ability, 3 questions of medium level ability, the remaining questions, 5 questions of entry level ability. Take this questionnaire and start your class with this small test. With that assessment, you will know what is the language level, what is the way they are able to communicate, what is their intelligence or knowledge about the subject. Then if somebody gets 0 out of 10, then you know that person needs extra attention. So you all would have identified at least 5 or 6 children from this entry behavior test itself that they may be probably slow learners or they are different from others. So that way, start giving additional material from day one. Then I also have institutions where they have short tests after every unit. And after that unit, they will find out the performance ability of the child and start giving additional material like remedial classes or additional learning worksheets or additional assignments, so that they can also keep in pace with the others, rest of the class. So we can do all these things to identify slow learners. If you have any other technique, if others would like to share, please.
Okay, ma'am. Tell us something about flipped classroom.
Yes, sir. There are 2 ways of understanding flipped classroom. So the word flip itself means you are reversing it. So earlier days, the flipped classroom concept came up when a person gives you an assignment. You are writing you are giving a problem. You are solving that problem and then you are bringing it to the class. But you don't know what is the theory behind the solving the problem. You might have done simple logical reasoning and solved that problem and you came to class. Then the teacher will tell you this is the formula. So with this formula, if you apply to this problem, the solution becomes simpler. This is flipped classroom. You gave the problem first, taught the theory next. That is one idea of flip. The other idea of flipped classroom is usually we teach it in the classroom and the student listen. Then you give them the homework, they will go and do at home. That is normal classroom. So here the flip is you send the lecture to home. So you have recorded your online lecture, you have sent it home. You have sent the content home. The child studies the content, comes to the classroom already knowing what this madam is going to teach. Then come there, have discussion, and then give them better clarity of what they have already studied in the content. So that is also another way of flipped classroom. So you are a science teacher or you are an arts teacher, you can apply this flip concept idea in this way. So that's my simple understanding of what is flipped classroom.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Further question, is teaching plan only applicable to autonomous colleges?
Teaching plan applicable only to autonomous colleges. Okay.
It is applicable to all.
I think it's applicable to all. It is applicable to all. A teaching plan is my course plan. So as a teacher, what is my plan? If I am having 90 working days in a semester, ideally I will get 50 classroom teaching hour, lecture hour. This semester I may get 30 hours, whether it is online or blended learning. So how will I use that 30 hour to teach that curriculum effectively? That is called teaching plan. So teacher makes that plan. It doesn't matter whether I am a university professor or an affiliated college professor. Teaching plan is a good idea. Have a plan of what you will teach, because some teacher will teach very slowly in the beginning. at the end they will rush. So some units you have spent maximum time, some units you have spent very, that's not a judicious way of doing our things. So please have teaching plan that will enable us to go in a paced manner. So it doesn't matter not next, but I think it is necessary for all of us.
Okay, I hope it is very clear with each and every participant that we have to go for preparing our teaching plan.
Yes, sir.
Another question, ma'am. In this pandemic situation,
Yes,
what
sir.
evaluation tools you would suggest during online lectures?
Yes, sir. Very big question, sir. I think AICT and UGC is having a lot of teams discussing on this. What we can do at our level? I am from a private management institution, an autonomous college. We have the habit of conducting our own end semester examination and CIA, continuous internal assessment examination. So, what are the online practices which I know, which we are doing, would be using learning management system, LMS. Through that I can conduct online exam, right? So we have Moodle as our primary LMS. So through Moodle as a platform, we were always having assignment component, online assessments. We can send activity assessment sheets, child will fill it up and then take photograph, upload and send it back to us. That is one way of assessment. Another way is they can type the answer directly in that and then they can send it to us. So your questions should not be what is 3 plus 2, then it is 5. So that way they will see anything and they will write it. But your question should be little evaluative, so that once you assume it is an open book exam, they already have material in hand, but you are making them learn it and then answer your questions. So that will take little more time. So if you have activity sheets where you can send it, even using Gmail, even using your podcast or any kind of Google Classroom also, send the Google Forms and then have small breakup in assessments into small parts. Not 100-mark exam cannot be conducted. NPTEL is trying to conduct online examination. I'm sure if you have registered for NPTEL courses, they have made us to do a lot of trials. So probably when they successfully do it, we will have a role model. But otherwise, at a smaller level, using LMS, Moodle assessment tool, through activity sheets, short test, 20 marks, 30 marks test, open book exams, you can assess the learning level of the child. If the motive is assessing learning level of the child and learning outcome, it can be done online successfully. It need not be test. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, one more question is there from the participant.
Yes,
where
sir.
Divyangan in the template related to this metric, as there is no separate column provided.
Yes, sir. So, yes, sir. In the earlier, when they revised in the month of February, in the earlier statements, the Excel sheets, they had a separate question for Divyanjan. Now they just want the institution to tell the number of people who are Divyanjans and whom we have given admission. Only in the admission part, they are asking the question, as well as in the later, the criteria, other criteria, not criteria 2. I'm talking only on criteria 2. In the other aspects, student support, there also Divyanjan is coming. Then governance and leadership, there also how we are taking efforts to provide support to them is coming. So that way in various places it is coming. But when it comes to criteria tool, only in the admission as well as how we are meeting the teaching learning needs of the child, we can mention. If we have Divyanjan in with us, you have to make a record of it, how you have catered to the needs of the specially abled children. So don't worry about the template. Create your own template. And in the admission record, you say, if you have earmarked seats, you have 20 seats reserved for a special need child, and you have filled 20 seats. Very good. So that you show in the admission data. That is enough, I feel. Then in teaching learning, you can record what steps we have taken. Then they have specific questions in criteria 5 and 7, if I am not wrong, with regard to Divyanjan.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Participant has put forward one question. Dr. Dhananjay Pingre, sir.
Yes, sir.
at his college, I think MBA and PGDM
Yes, sir.
courses, these programs are running. Now MBA is affiliated to SPPU University, and PGDM is affiliated to AICTE. Now his question is whether we need to conduct NAC of both programs, or is there any way to do NAC only for MBA?
Okay, if I am not mistaken, there are two things. One is PGDM is no longer there, it is becoming MBAs. Fine. For NAC assessment, we generally they don't consider PGDM program at all, because PGDM is approved only by AICTE. UGC does not give separate affiliation order for PGDM. Sorry if I'm wrong, please kindly excuse me. So that means when you are going for NAC accreditation, we generally don't show PGDM data at all. We are showing only MBA data. So that is the question sir had asked. I am answering that. We are not showing PGDM data. We are showing MBA only. Because it is not a UGC affiliated program, it is a AICTE affiliated program.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is my answer, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Further question is, please explain prognostic assessment for slow learners.
I said diagnostic assessment. Okay, prognostic also sounds good only. It's just a tool. Assessing, diagnosis is finding out. So learning ability of the child, that's all. So in a classroom of 60 who is seated in front of you, who are the advanced learners? So can you find out without a test? It is not possible. So you have to have accuracy, means you should have some kind of test. So develop a skill test the beginning of the class to find out. Otherwise, we have to wait till internal exam, and then we will be shocked by some marks. So that way, if you find out in the earlier stage, you can weekly, you can give them worksheets so that they can start practicing from day one. So I meant diagnostic assessment, diagnosing, finding out who are slow learners at the beginning using a short test or entry behavior test. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
One another question is there.
Yes,
Study
sir,
tour public visit reports.
Yes, sir, I saw that question. Dr. Pratima has asked this question. If 100 students have attended the trip, should I have 100 report? Yes, ma'am. It is student-wise report, ma'am. There should be one class trip report plus I want a report for each child, ma'am. So I think that is how the DVV explanation size. They will name the child. I have to give the evidence for that child, not the class. So if in that class report the child name is not there, the IQAC member only will be in trouble. So it is better you ask every child to write an experiential report. What did they see? What did they learn? How it benefited? And give a report. So that when the peer team asks you the question, you can show the report. So please, if it is 100 report also, please keep it with you. One class report you upload if there is a shortage of space. But they will ask by name only.
Okay. But another question, I think this might be a last question.
Okay,
if college is going for accreditation during middle of academic year, how the latest completed year is counted?
Sir, Shiva sir, your question itself has the answer, sir. So you are now in the middle of 2021 means your last completed year is 1920. Whichever year both the semesters examination is over, that will be considered as the latest completed academic year, because you have to give data up to result for the 5 years of assessment.
Dr. Dhananjay Pingre, sir. Sir, if you want to ask any question in regard to your query, it will be much better instead of typing it in chat box.
Yes, sir, please. One question is on bridge course. Before the other person asks the question, can I answer, sir?
Yeah.
Bridge course refers to bridging the gap. For example, BCom first semester, a child has come. People have studied 12th standard in various boards. People have studied and they have joined first year BCom because they have the eligibility. But how good they did accountancy or maths in their previous class, we don't know. So to bridge that gap, we have to give a course that is called bridge course on accountancy. So basic accountancy will be taught in that bridge course. Then maths, BSc maths student also sometimes need bridge course because we have to teach some lower level concept for the first BSc maths student. So that whichever, if you are teaching lower to that class, then it becomes bridge. Because in the classroom, I cannot teach them because I have to start from 1 only. I cannot teach 0 and -1. So you teach that in a separate class, then that becomes bridge class. From 1 I have started to teach and the students are struggling. Then I have a remedial class to teach 1 and 2 again. Then it is called remedial class. That's the difference between bridge and the remedial class, sir.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Dhananjay, sir. Please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, ma'am, we are running PGDM since 2009. And
Okay,
then we
sir.
started MBA from 2012.
Okay,
So
sir.
again, one batch we have to complete for PGDM, which will be completed on 2022. And for this, if we started NAG for this year, so we have to include this PGDM always because we got the certificate of approval from AICTE for both the programs
Okay,
on one
sir.
single page.
Okay,
So
sir.
that would be maybe the issue. If you are not prepared, if we are not prepared for the PGDM, and if NAC asks us to complete it
Sir,
in
it's not a problem. You submit one of your AQARs.
Yeah.
If the NAC has a query, they will immediately say their doubts through that AQAR. Before going for NAC accreditation, we have to submit our annual quality assessment report. In
Yeah.
that, when you are sending the data with regard to PGDM, they will give you all your doubts will be clarified at the time. Otherwise, please contact NAC office also for this information. According to my knowledge, last time when we went PGDM, we also had, but PGDM does not come under the UGC purview and NAC accreditation. Whereas MBA will come under UGC purview and then comes under NAC accreditation. That is the basic difference, sir. But I think you can ask them also. They are also conducting a lot of sessions, sir. So
Yeah,
please
yeah.
contact them, yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bingley, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Ma'am, just the last question.
Yes, sir.
Kindly suggest possible documentations for 2.6.2.
Okay, sir. 2.6.2 is regarding the mapping of outcomes. Okay, for OBE, how are we doing the assessment fulfillment of outcomes? Sir, there is no documentation, straightforward. The assessment that you have done, attainment calculation. You should have a team, your result analysis team, who's doing an assessment calculation. So each and every course of yours, you should calculate gross outcome attainment. And that you have to map it with program outcome attainment. Then you make that analysis and then give the report. That is the documentation, sir. Then the peer team will visit us and ask us questions with regard to this attainment. So that much only we can do, sir. We cannot do anything more. There are now softwares also available to calculate the attainment. Even in the question papers, now people have started to put in this question number 1 is put for assessing attainment of course outcome 1. Question number 2, course outcome 2. Like that also they have come out with mapping the question paper also. That can be a documentary tool, sir. Yeah. Otherwise, the simple calculation of attainment is the evidence for this 2.6.2.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you, sir.
I hope with this question we will end up this question answer session.
Yes, sir.
All the participants, I hope they have got maybe positive response from the speaker. So lastly, we are now moving towards the concluding session. One of our participant, Geeta ma'am, is here. She is a former principal of Nirmala Niketan College of Social Work, Mumbai. For us, she is like a mentor. She is one of our family member itself. So I request Geeta ma'am to please share her views about this conference. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Good morning. Good day, everyone. Dr. Shali, Jeevan, and Samta, and Ramya. Dr. Ramya, what do I say to this session?
Ma'am,
Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I wish I could be a teacher once more.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
retired.
That's the pleasure of
Right.
teaching, ma'am. Yes.
It's 3.5 years since I retired, but your session was so good and excellent presentation, very lucid, very succinctly presented. And what I really liked about Dr. Shali and Dr. Jeevan and Samta and entire Yashwantrao Chavan College is the reach out to the other colleges. All the good colleges which are doing well, very good, excellent, but it is our responsibility to reach out colleges which need handholding. So that is what you have done, and you have facilitated this. For the teachers, all the teachers here, there is nothing else. You have to read the NAC manual. Read it, know it like the back of your hand, know each and every, and have a thorough understanding. I'm happy that this sort of information is available for the younger teachers, because when we were teachers, we didn't have this information. A lot of it we did through our gut level understanding, but now you have guidelines, and this is an excellent opportunity. And I think what you stressed, Dr. Ramya, is that how important is the teacher's involvement, and you rightly said that it is not the teacher's, the way of looking at what you need to do, it's what the student wants and the student needs. So for me, reaching out to the weakest student has always been important, not to the students who are advanced. How do we reach out to the weakest students? And about the teaching plan, and everyone has to have a teaching plan, and you also need to have a methodology clear for every aspect of your teaching plan. It's not just, overall, every aspect, break it up, and that you've brought it out so beautifully. And what is the takeaway from your session from me? I would love to be a teacher again and probably come to Christ College to teach. So thank you, Dr. Shali. Thank you, Samta and Jeevan, my friends. I enjoyed their company. So the minute Dr. Shali sent me this, though I am coming from a college which has been accredited 3 times with an A and also autonomous college, but I think the learning is superb. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shali and Samta and Jeevan.
Thank you, madam. I presence itself ends the morale of the teaching fraternity. Thank you
so much.
So thank you once again, Geeta ma'am, for your motivational words. This will really help us for arranging some upcoming conferences, ma'am. So thank you very much. Now, with the permission of Ramya ma'am and Shali ma'am, I feel that we should move towards the concluding session. Ma'am, will it be okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Very good afternoon, and all. I am Jeevan Borate. I am the IQAC coordinator of this institute. I am associated with this institute since year 2002. I am here to offer a vote of thanks for this today's e-conference. Respected and our most distinguished speaker of the day, Ms. Ramya Madam. Respected in charge principal of our college, Dr. Shali Joseph. Respected vice principal, Bhai Shailendra Mane. All our beloved colleagues and dear participants. On behalf of Yashwantrao Chavan School of Social Work, today I am really feeling honored and privileged to have this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks to our resource person, Ms. Ramya ma'am, for gracing today's workshop. Thank you, ma'am, for your very interesting and thought-provoking address. Ma'am, you really helped us to understand very practically the activities to be undertaken and documents to be maintained under criterion 2 of NAC accreditation process. It will really help all of us to deal very comfortably and calmly with the process of NAC. We understood what our role is as far as teaching, learning and evaluations are concerned. This will really will benefit us for all personally as well as institutionally. Really, ma'am, it was very meaningful and wonderful presentation. We are very much thankful to you for that. Here, I would like to I would also like to express my gratitude towards our in-charge principal, Dr. Shali Joseph, for her presence and for her valuable words. Without her support, it would have not been possible to carry on this conference successfully. It was her idea which we had just implemented. So from bottom of my heart, I once again express my gratitude towards dear Shalima. I would also like to thank our Vice Principal, Mr. Bhai Shailendra Mane, for his moral support and guidance. I also say thanks to all my dear colleagues for their valuable presence and support. Also, I would like to thank the co-coordinator of today's conference, Ms. Samata Mane, for her support and active coordination. Finally, thanks to all of you wonderful participants who have turned up from various parts of India. Thank you all so much for your kind cooperation and discipline. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you, thank you. Meet you again. Now, with the permission of Ramya ma'am and Shali ma'am, we will end up this conference with small prayer.
Sir, I also wish to thank Dr. Shali Joseph who invited me. Generally, I don't accept invitation at all because I don't think I am capable of teaching others. I'm just a learner. But Dr. Shali convinced me to come and to this session. So I'm very grateful to you, ma'am, because I had the opportunity to interact as in do some reflection also. So it was a very meaningful day. Thank you, Shaliman, for inviting me. I am happy to know about Yashwantrao Chavan Institute of Social Work also. You are doing a lot of services. Through your website, I could get a lot of information. So thank you. I also thank our Professor Bogate sir for contacting me and keep bringing me to this session. And thank you all the participants for your lovely questions and wonderful interaction. So I thank Kristu Jayanti College for deputing me to this session and have a meaningful interaction today. So thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Ramya ma'am, again. I just would like to say that you have to take up this type of assignment again so that our teaching fraternity will be benefited and all the institutes will be benefited, because the way you explain the things and the way you can retain the attention of the audience, that is that you have a high potential for that. So I think you have to take up this assignment. As an youngster, I again appreciate your dynamic personality and simple explanation. Thank you so much.
Dear all participants, I have posted the feedback link in the chat box, as well as I will publish it on the WhatsApp group. So please give your valuable feedback. So thank you once again very much. And now we will end up with this conference with a small prayer.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ramya ma'am.
Thank you, Ramya ma'am.
Yeah, see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samantha also.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye, sir.